É, rapaziada, Death Stranding 2 já vai sair aí mês que vem. E a gente já teve aqui uma prévia da rapaziada, que jogaram 30 horas. Mano, acho que eu nunca vi uma preview onde a galera jogou antecipadamente 30 horas, mano. Que quantidade de jogo absurda. E passaram aqui pra gente o que acharam do jogo. Então, meus queridos, chega mais. Vamos descobrir aqui o que tem de diferente no Death Stranding 2 na mão da galera que realmente pôde jogar o jogo aqui e vai passar suas opiniões pra nós. Se curtiu aqui o vídeo, meus queridos, já sabe, não esquece de deixar aquele crítico aí no like e se inscreve no canal, mano, que a gente faz vídeo aqui todo santo dia. Mas, rapaziada, antes, só dar um recado pra vocês que a gente tá com a coleção de camisas na loja.com.br/ataque-crítico em promoção. Aproveita que tá chegando aqui o friozinho e vem aqui na loja e você vai jogar um cupom, uma camiseta e tu vai levar um moletom e uma camiseta de graça. Então você bota os dois ali no carrinho, você pode vir aqui na loja, o link vai estar na descrição, seleciona qualquer item lá, mas você vai ganhar uma camiseta gratuita. Então faz aí, o link tá na descrição que você não vai se arrepender. Aproveita que o friozinho tá chegando aí bacana pra nós e já leva uma camiseta gratuitamente. Mas rapaziada, olha só, aqui do Brasil a gente teve poucas pessoas que deram uma olhada. Se não me falha a memória, as únicas duas pessoas do Brasil que viram aqui e tiveram essa preview foi o Flow Games e o Voxel. E bem, o do Flow Games eu ainda não vi no ar, o do Voxel não tô muito afim de ver. O que eu geralmente gosto de ver dessas previews aqui, normalmente eu gosto da prestação do vídeo, da opinião que coloca, é da Eurogamer. Então eu botei aqui pra gente poder assistir, tá? Tô deixando o link na descrição também pra você deixar lá o crítico no like. E vamos lá, tem 17 minutinhos aqui, a preview da Eurogamer tá com legenda. Vamos lá.
Recently, Eurogamer was invited to an intense Death Stranding boot camp where we got to play a massive 30 hours
Cara,
of
30
Death
horas,
Stranding
loucura.
2 on the beach. But what's new in this sequel? What's it like to play? How has Kojima responded to critics of the divisive first game? And most importantly, 6 years later, does the story finally make any sense?
Ah, não,
You can
peraí, não
find
vai
out all
fazer,
of
pô.
this and much more,
Cara, agora que eu vi que a
all
legenda tá em
while
inglês,
watching
calma
some
aí.
brand new Death Stranding 2 gameplay in this here video. So, let's get started.
Foi mal, galera. Agora que eu vi que a legenda tá em inglês, mas ele não fez nada, só fez uma introdução. Pera aí.
Right at the start of Death Stranding 2, there is an optional recap of the first game which will give returning and new players a
interessante
brief
ter isso,
rundown
viu?
of the original's plot. Although its handful of stills and voiceover are barely sufficient to fully explain its weird intricacies.
Vai ter vídeos,
This is a
já
sequel
tem vídeo na
for those
internet,
with
né,
intimate knowledge of the
simplificando a
first
lore.
game then. But by cutting down the exposition,
Talvez eu
it's
faça
also a
também
much pacier
pra gente.
experience as a result, and it swiftly gets players into the gameplay. In under 20 minutes, Sam is off on his first big mission, and from there, key plot beats are sparsely spaced out across playtime. There's a new addition to the sequel that also aids this pace. It's called The Corpus. As with the likes of Avowed and Final Fantasy XVI, the Corpus is an in-game glossary that can be opened at any time to recap plot points and
Nossa,
read
isso é
about
incrível pra
characters
esse
and
jogo.
places. It's not only an essential resource, it ensures that Kojima's script is tight and concise, with extra details saved for later reading. As for the plot itself, the basics are, so far, comparatively straightforward. The 30 hours we played for preview represent around 40% of the story, and don't worry, we won't be spoiling anything here beyond a few points on the premise. It begins 11 months after the first game, with delivery man Sam in hiding along with his BB Lou. After connecting America to the chiral network, deliveries are now completed
Antes a gente
by
fazia
the
isso com o Pod, agora a gente
automated
faz com
order
ela
assistant
mesmo.
system. So, essentially, Sam's job has been taken over by AI. Instead, he
Olha!
now leads a comfortable life with his adopted daughter, but that is soon disrupted by the return of Fragile, who sends Sam out for a mission.
Aí, né, o Kojima fazendo uma crítica social foda, né, contra a IA, mas meio que já tinha isso no jogo, né, no primeiro, porque, tipo, você já tinha aqueles robôs automatizados que eles passavam pelos lugares pra poder fazer as entregas.
For her new company, Drawbridge, which is the not-so-simple task of connecting Mexico to the chiral network.
Olha esse mapa,
After
amigo.
crossing the Mexican border, and yes, there is a wall, Sam's mission soon takes him across the globe, for reasons, to the outback of Australia, and this is actually where the bulk of the game appears to take place. Even with its more comprehensible plot though, Death Stranding 2 still has its fair share of weirdness and lack of subtlety. It is a Kojima game after all. This remains a game about shadowy beings crossing over from the land of the dead that only half-dead babies can see. There's a flying cat made out of tar, a woman who can summon rain, a talking stop-motion animated puppet, and of course, they all come with far too literal names like Dollman, Rainy, and Tomorrow.
Sensacional. É isso.
Death Stranding 2's world is more dynamic and diverse than that of the first game. There are more options for asynchronous connection and more opportunities for player expression. Gameplay then is an evolution of the first, but there's so much depth and texture now. Of the time we played, the vast majority was spent experimenting with gameplay systems rather than just passively watching cutscenes, which is very unlike Kojima. The game is still focused on taking cross-country delivery jobs across a hostile landscape for social media likes, stacking and balancing a load of boxes on your back, and dealing with momentum-based traversal at a slow and steady pace, sure. But to us, all the new changes made it feel similar to the difference between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom.
Eu acho que, tipo assim, pra galera que queria que fosse uma outra coisa, né? O jogo fosse muito mais de ação, né? Alguma coisa assim. Acho que eles vão botar mais ação no jogo, né? Tô imaginando aqui. Mas ainda é... Pô, se mudasse o ritmo, não fosse um jogo lento, na paz, assim, que a identidade que foi criada pro Death Stranding, sabe? Então, eu acho justo manter.
More of the same, but the added depth makes the first game feel primitive by comparison. For instance, once the chiral network expands following each mission, the game world comes alive in a flurry of signs and structures left behind by other players. The asynchronous online connectivity remains as unique as ever, with small discoveries like a perfectly placed ladder from another player feeling monumentous mid-mission. Now, however, this has been expanded with more structures, including zip lines that now curve slightly, safe houses for checkpoints, and our personal favourite, ramps that shoot Sam through the air like Sonic the Hedgehog. There are still laborious moments.
Cara, tirolesa que faz curva vai ser OP. A tirolesa quebra o jogo, pra mim. Cara, eu fiz questão de linkar o mapa todo do jogo por tirolesa e o jogo acabou. Agora uma tirolesa que faz curva, cara, como que o Kojima vai equilibrar isso?
Collecting the materials necessary to fully connect the world with roads and now monorails, but there's satisfaction in pottering around helping other players.
Olha!
While vehicles are much more prevalent in Death Stranding 2 than in the first game, trudging on foot still remains a viable strategy. However, the game doles out new options and equipment quickly to encourage a change in approach. For example, we collected plenty of useful extras in side quests, including some powerful gloves that allowed us to punch mech enemies in the face, and a cute little otter hat that, when equipped, granted us the ability to float in water. The game isn't entirely frictionless, there'd be no fun in that, but all these extra options mean you'll spend less time tripping on rocks and more time experimenting. And while individual changes are small, they're transformative in totality, making for a game that's far more engaging than the first. Death Stranding 2 isn't just about walking from A to B to see the next cutscene. Now it makes traversal fun and puzzle-like with multiple solutions. And this feels like how it should have been all along.
Pô, mas... Pô, sei lá. Eu achava que o primeiro também era... isso, né?
The Mexican desert and the Australian outback are far more dynamic than America before it, thanks to the addition here of extreme weather conditions. Sandstorms topple Sam over, intense rainfall leads to flooding, and earthquakes shake the ground and screen alike to send avalanches tumbling. There's more diversity too, from barren mountainous outcrops to white sandy deserts, lush jungle and moon-like rocky debris, all bathed in blinding sunlight or striking moonlight depending on the time of day, which can also impact the temperature of your precious cargo. Plus, creating routes across the map will now signal specific hazards along the way to prepare for in advance.
Keep an eye out for the rivers and bandit camps in the area too. Hazards like these can make your life much harder.
We did miss the rugged and melancholic Icelandic tundra that formed such a core part of the first game's identity, but in hindsight, it does feel static by comparison. Here, the changing landscape and lighting allow Kojima's cinematography to thrive, from the glare of sunset blooming behind ghostly silhouetted entities to a giant moon overwhelming the sky that lends a space-age iconography to the proceedings.
E ele tá com o Bibi, né? Tá com o pod.
For fans of customization, there's far more this time around too. For Sam, for his backpack, and for vehicles. Sam naturally and explicitly levels up his abilities through use, be that increasing his stamina or his proficiency with different weapon types. Moreover, as his porter rank increases in different areas following the completion of each mission, new buffs are unlocked on a skill tree. For instance, more time in stealth will allow for buffs like better noise cancellation and enemy alerts, while more time in combat will unlock improved bullets and a better scanner range. It's RPG light, but it adds to the feeling of Sam being an extension of your playstyle and adapting to each mission.
Eu gosto bastante dessa parada da melhoria vir de acordo com o uso que você dá nela. Eu acho bem interessante porque você vai naturalmente evoluindo sem nem perceber.
Then there's backpack customization, with Sam able to fabricate various attachments, extra ammo pouches, shields, and the like. This later expands to vehicles too. Not only were we able to add an arm to a truck that would automatically grab lost packages, but then we attached machine guns to automatically shoot enemies as we drove through bases in tank-like fashion. And after previously trudging through these areas on foot, this felt particularly cathartic. There are broadly three ways of approaching combat in Death Stranding 2, be that against human enemies or the game's infamous BTs. Stealth, shooting, or avoiding encounters altogether. With the all-new traversal methods, that third option is certainly possible, though by taking this route, you'd be missing out on all the fun.
Isso não evolui. Assim, você vai evoluir talvez o stealth, né? Mas não evolui a técnica de combate. Olha lá a metralhadorazinha automática, viu ali, ó? Tá no braço.
In many ways, Death Stranding 2 feels like a sort of Metal Gear Solid 6, an extension of the open-world design and smooth transition between stealth and combat that the fifth game provided. Mexico and Australia are filled with enemy bases to infiltrate, with Sam able to sneak around for silent takedowns or simply fire away with powerful weapons. He's given a whole load of options too, from pistols and assault rifles and shotguns to grenade launchers, a blood boomerang because we are in Australia after all, and the return of our favourite rope-firing bowler gun.
Cara, eu gostava muito dessa arma que você atira a cordinha.
And combat can be explosive, if maybe a little bit too easy. Combat against BTs, meanwhile, is more active this time. These previously invisible enemies.
É tipo assim, eu lembro que o combate no Death Stranding ele é meio fácil mesmo. Que você, conforme você vai pegando algumas armas, e algumas armas que são um pouco quebradas, né, em relação a outras. Você perceber desde o primeiro. Talvez esteja se repetindo aqui. Mas vamos ver o que tem que falar com os BTs aqui.
These are more visible now, not to mention the new watcher type that can properly see Sam rather than sense him, which results in some tense sneaking. With plenty of weapon types to retaliate with, however, BT encounters are no longer a tedious lesson in holding your breath, but more shootouts against nightmarish visions. BTs may have lost some of their fear factor as a result of this, but when the rainfall comes, Death Stranding 2 remains darkly atmospheric. As for the bosses, we only fought a couple in our playtime, and while they were fantastically surreal, we're still waiting for that Psycho Mantis or the end moment.
Caraca, mano. Que BT bizarro, mano. É um crânio partido no meio. Bomba de sangue. Um daninho bichuruca vai tá dando. Metal Gear encontra Assassin's Creed? Vamos ver.
Before you go in all guns blazing though, you can still adopt a stealthy approach. Sam can wear different camouflage types before hiding in some conveniently placed long grass, but just make sure your pack isn't too tall before you do so. From here, he can throw his tiny puppet pal Dollman into the sky to scout out and tag enemies, Assassin's Creed style.
Caralho, então você usa o Dollman pra marcar os caras.
Boss's suite of gadgets and maneuverability, sure, but when he's sneaking through jungles in the dark and dodging spotlights before throttling enemies from behind, it certainly feels like a cheeky middle finger to Konami, especially when Death Stranding 2 trailers have already shown glimpses of a mysterious snake-like character.
É. Do jeito que ele fala, certeza que já encontrou ele, mas não pode falar. 30 horas também, né? É foda.
Perhaps our favourite new feature of Death Stranding 2, however, is its music player. Available partway through, it allows players to create playlists of collected tracks and listen to them at any point within the chiral network. Low Raw's music was intrinsically linked to the identity of the first game and its most prominent moments, but it's wonderfully freeing to be able to create similar moments yourself as you explore each peak and valley. As for the songs themselves, we're not allowed to say which musicians are now involved, but even though there's way more variety now, the new music still goes hand in hand with gameplay and setting.
Like Bring Me the Horizon
to sunnier climes, the tunes bring a less dour and more hopeful tone to the game as a whole. It feels less about fearing death and more about preserving life.
E parece que essa é a temática do jogo todo, né? Essa temática meio que mudou pouco.
We emerged from the On the Beach boot camp having enjoyed our time with Death Stranding 2 far more than the original. It's tighter, pacier, more dynamic and more gripping. Just as we were tired with traversal, a new upgrade or piece of equipment enticed us back in. Just as the sparse story left us wanting, a new bizarre curveball of Kojima weirdness had us grinning. Just as we thought we knew what Death Stranding 2 was, it surprised us once again. It's as if Death Stranding was a mere design concept, and its sequel is properly fulfilling its promise, with a big dollop of Metal Gear thrown in there too, for good measure. Death Stranding 2 On the Beach then is clearly a labour of love, filled with carefully balanced gameplay systems, exceptional visuals, and extraneous details and secret scenes, all wrapped up in Kojima's irrepressible sense of cool. Kojima is now in his 60s, and the game feels very much like a gateway into his mind as he contemplates life, death, family, human connection, future legacy, and, most important of all, which musician he'll be listening to next. In that sense, so far, it feels like the most Kojima game yet, a culmination of all of his prior achievements.
Kojima é o Kojima mesmo, não tem jeito.
Thank you so much for watching this preview for Death Stranding 2 on the beach. If you enjoyed it, please do give it a like, subscribe to Eurogamer for more Death Stranding 2 coverage in the near future, and please do check out this other preview video that's on screen and clickable right now.
Beleza.
Goodbye.
Tchau, tchau, meu querido. Obrigadão pela prévia. Rapaziada, eu vi aqui, né? Me parece que ele vai ter uma vibe bem igual do primeiro jogo. Porém, com algumas adições que eu acho que são legais, são importantes, não só porque uma galera ficou falando, né, do jogo. O jogo é muito lento, tá? Ele fala que o jogo tá um pouco mais rápido, tá com combate um pouco mais melhor, um pouco mais dinâmico. Então tem essas coisas assim, mas também pelo fato de ser o segundo jogo. Então a gente já passou pelo primeiro jogo. Então o segundo ele precisa ter umas adaptações justamente porque ele é uma sequência, né? E cara, parece que ao mesmo tempo ele não tirou a vibe que é Death Stranding. Então eu imagino que uma pessoa que não curtiu Death Stranding, o 1, não vai ser o 2 que vai mudar. Pelo menos foi a impressão de que me passou aqui pela preview, né? De que quem não gostou de Death Stranding 1 vai continuar não gostando aqui no 2. Apesar de que teve algumas coisinhas que deram uma melhorada, ele ainda continua com a mesma vibe do jogo. Agora, uma coisa que não foi falada aqui na preview, obviamente, porque não pode falar, mas que pra mim é um dos fatores mais legais aqui do jogo, é a história. É a cinematografia do Kojima, as Kojimices, né? Chegou a mencionar um pouquinho aqui dos personagens, a menina que convoca a chuva, tem o Dollman e tal, mas ele não pôde falar, obviamente, mas é bizarro pensar que os caras jogaram 30 horas, né, mano? Então ele deve ter sabido muita coisa aqui do jogo. Por exemplo, tem uma hora que o Sam tá com um pod de BB, mas não tá com a Lu. O que aconteceu com a Lu? Onde que ela foi, né? Aquele trailer lá que a gente tem visto, o que aconteceu, né? Então tem muita coisa que a gente não sabe da lore e pra mim é uma das coisas, se não a coisa que mais me instiga aqui no Death Stranding. É realmente essa lore que eles colocaram aqui no jogo. No mais, a gente vai ter que esperar, cara. Falta um mêsinho. Mês que vem a gente já põe as mãos aqui no jogo. Esperançosamente a Sony manda pra gente, Sony. A gente manda revisor aqui pra vocês quando a gente puder. Beleza, meus queridos? Então é isso. Espero que tenham curtido aqui essa preview. E ó, eu vi que lançou aqui, os caras conseguiram postar uma gameplay sem comentários do Death Stranding 2. E meu alarme está tocando aqui. Vou gravar essa gameplay, essa react gameplay pra vocês também. Vou estar postando, se pá, hoje ainda antes do almoço. Beleza, rapaziada? Então vocês assistem a gameplay junto com a gente aqui na hora do almoço. Vou ficando por aqui. Um grande abraço pra vocês. Até mais. E fui.